Many people spend their lives looking for ways to earn more money. They believe that if they could get a salary raise, a new job, or win the lottery, their financial life would be transformed. But there's one issue that is often overlooked: the mindset shift. Robert Kiyosaki, in his teachings, emphasizes that true wealth doesn't come from how much you earn, but from how you think about money. He says that the rich, unlike the poor, study finances. They learn about investments, money management, and ways to multiply their resources. The poor, on the other hand, often avoid this kind of knowledge, whether out of fear, shame, or because they believe money isn't for them. What they don't realize is that if they want to change their financial situation, they must first change the way they see money. Understanding how money works and how to make it work for you is the first step to any financial transformation. One day, a man found himself in a frustrating situation. He was earning enough to live comfortably, but still ended each month tight on money, unable to save anything. He began to question where the mistake was. He had a decent income, so why couldn't he accumulate wealth? He then decided to do something simple yet eye-opening. He started writing down every single daily expense in detail to understand where his money was going. At first, he thought this would be a pointless task, but he soon noticed something surprising. The small expenses, the ones he barely paid attention to, like a coffee here, a snack there, or the impulse to buy something unplanned, were draining his bank account. He realized that these seemingly harmless purchases added up to much more than he had imagined by the end of the month. The issue wasn't how much he earned, but how much he was letting slip away without noticing. That made him understand that often the biggest obstacle to financial health isn't earning more, but controlling everyday spending. So, he began to change his habits, prioritizing what truly mattered, and cutting out those minor expenses that had been silently sabotaging his financial success. That simple act of becoming aware of where his money was going opened his eyes to a new way of thinking. He realized that with more control over his daily expenses, he could start saving and investing. This was the first step toward a major shift in his financial life. After his realization about small daily expenses, the man began to rethink his approach to money in a more structured way. He understood that to gain real control over his finances and move toward financial freedom, he needed a strategy. That's when he created a simple yet powerful rule he could follow every month, the 70-10-10-10 rule. The idea behind this rule was to divide his income in a way that would allow him to cover all his needs, while also investing in his future, learning more about finance, and being prepared for emergencies. Let's break down each part of this rule. 70% to live. The majority of his income, 70%, should be allocated to daily expenses like housing, food, transportation, and fixed bills. But he soon realized that by setting this 70% limit, he had to rethink his lifestyle, cutting excesses and avoiding waste. He made a conscious effort to live within this boundary, focusing on essentials and eliminating unnecessary spending. 10% to invest. The second pillar of his strategy was to invest 10% of his income. Investing wasn't just a choice, it was a necessity. He knew that leaving his money sitting in the bank wouldn't do anything for him. So he began researching investments, learning that even small amounts could be enough to start growing his wealth. He began with simple options like savings accounts and low-risk funds, but eventually explored others like stocks and real estate funds. That 10% became not only a priority, but a commitment to himself. 10% to learn. He allocated another 10% of his income to personal development. After all, one of the most important lessons he had learned was that to achieve financial freedom, he needed to invest in education. It wasn't just about earning more money, but about understanding how money works. He started buying books on finance, enrolled in online courses, and sought out more knowledge about investing, economics, and money management. This continuous learning was essential for making more informed and confident decisions in the future. 10% for emergencies. Lastly, he set aside 10% for an emergency fund. He knew that unexpected situations happen, and he needed to be prepared. This fund was not to be touched except in real emergencies, such as a medical issue, job loss, or a major unexpected repair. This 10% gave him security and peace of mind during crises, without needing to rely on credit or expensive loans. In the beginning, following this rule was a big challenge. He had to adjust his lifestyle, rethink his priorities, and learn to live with less. But over time, he felt he was gaining control over his financial life. He began to see concrete results. His peace of mind increased. He started saving and gradually began to invest more. He realized that by following this rule with discipline, he was building a more secure future for himself and his family. Over time, this practice helped him create a solid base of financial knowledge and stability, putting him on a path of continuous growth. Those simple 10% allocations for learning, investing, and building an emergency fund were the key to his financial success. It taught him that to achieve true freedom, it's not enough to just work hard. You need a smart plan and a long-term strategy. When the man started applying the 70-10-10-10 rule, something surprising happened. The true feeling of financial freedom didn't come with a salary increase, as he had imagined. On the contrary, the feeling of freedom came much earlier, and it came from organization. He realized that while he had been focused on trying to earn more, he had neglected control over what he already had. That was what truly made the difference. As he discovered, financial freedom isn't necessarily about having more money. It's about being able to control what you already have. He realized that the big mistake people make is waiting for a raise or an external change to improve their finances. The real change starts within us, in how we deal with what we already have. When you have control over your income, even if it's small, you begin to feel a sense of peace that money alone can't give you. He started to see his financial life differently, not as a race for more and more, but as a steady building process, where each step in the right direction brought a sense of progress. The key was understanding that the greatest financial risk isn't the lack of money, but the lack of planning and organization. A raise would only be useful if he knew how to manage it properly. He also understood that relying on a single source of income was a huge risk. When you put all your eggs in one basket, you become vulnerable to unexpected events, a job loss, an economic crisis, or an emergency. That's why he realized that true financial security comes from diversification, from having different income streams and building a solid safety net. Extra income, contrary to what many think, wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity. And by starting to look for ways to generate this extra income, he found the balance he had long been seeking. This was a major lesson. True financial freedom comes from organization and diversified income sources. He didn't need to wait for a big raise. He needed to learn to manage what he already had, and from there, build new opportunities for himself. The freedom he experienced came from being in full control of his finances, regardless of how much he earned. After understanding the importance of controlling his finances and having a solid foundation of organization, he took the next step, using what he already knew how to do to generate extra income. He realized that financial freedom didn't depend only on a big salary, but on his ability to use his skills and talents to create new sources of income. He began to see that many people have incredible skills, but fail to recognize the potential of those skills in the marketplace. Instead of waiting for a promotion or a new job, he decided to put his abilities into practice and explore different ways to earn money. He started small, with no major investments, but with a lot of determination. He knew the most important thing was to begin, and the rest would follow. What he did was simple but effective. He started offering services in areas he already knew well. He sold homemade sweets, prepared lunch boxes, and began tutoring in subjects he was good at. The most interesting part was that in each of these activities, he discovered there was a market interested in what he had to offer. He realized that what really made the difference was not being afraid to start. Every small action he took brought him closer to his financial goals. He also saw that the more effort he put in and the more he applied his skills, the more people began to notice and recommend him. These small sources of extra income began to add up, and more importantly, he was no longer relying on just one source of income. He had taken his first step toward diversification. He started gaining more control over his time and resources, and this financial independence began to emerge naturally. The biggest lesson he learned was that any skill can be turned into money, and there is no limit to the possibilities. Whether you're a good cook, teacher, seamstress, or even someone with a specific talent, there's always a way to turn that into a source of income. The secret is to act, use what you already know how to do, and have the courage to take the first step. This initial movement gave him more confidence, which motivated him to expand his income streams even further. He began to view earning extra income not just as a necessity, but as an ongoing opportunity for growth. Over time, the man learned that a salary increase wasn't the solution to his financial problems. What he realized was that even if he earned more, if he didn't know how to manage it, nothing would change. The true key to financial freedom was knowing how to handle what he already had. Robert Kiyosaki often emphasizes that financial education is the foundation of success. And this man began to understand that without the right knowledge, he would always be used by money instead of being in control of it. It doesn't matter how much you earn. If you don't understand the basics of finance, how to make your money work for you, how to control your spending, and how to invest, you will never be able to build a solid foundation for the future. He started studying personal finance more deeply. He learned how the banking system works, how credit can become a trap, and how money can grow through smart investing. He dedicated himself to learning about compound interest, different types of investments, and how to build a diversified portfolio. Moreover, he realized that many people who earn a lot end up spending even more. They think that earning more means they can spend more. But the secret was having a mindset of abundance, where money wasn't just something to spend, but something to manage strategically. He understood that without discipline, a higher income would just be an illusion, a path to more spending and more debt. That's when he truly grasped Kiyosaki's great lesson. It's not how much you earn, it's what you do with what you earn. The key was in how he managed every dollar that came in, not in how much came in. That's why he continued to invest in his financial education and applied what he learned to ensure that, even with his current income, he was creating a prosperous future. He also understood that financial education is not something you acquire once and for all. It's a continuous process. Each new piece of knowledge helped him make better decisions and deal with financial challenges more effectively. That's how he felt truly in control of his financial life, not at the mercy of external circumstances or unexpected events. Now that he was more aware of his finances and equipped with the right knowledge, he knew he could handle any salary increase that came his way, and more importantly, make sure it was channeled wisely to build more wealth in the future. One of this man's greatest discoveries was that to start investing, he didn't need large amounts of money. Many people believe that investing requires a big savings cushion to begin. However, what he learned was quite the opposite. Starting is more important than the initial amount. He started with what he had, just $20. That amount seemed small, but the most important part was the shift in mindset he experienced when he decided to invest. He understood that the true secret to success in the world of investing isn't the initial sum, but consistency and the development of good financial habits. Kiyosaki always says that the most important thing is to start, not to wait for perfect conditions. The habit of investing is what truly makes a difference over time. Soon, he noticed that his investments were generating returns, even if small. More importantly, he became familiar with the process. He learned how compound interest works and how money invested over time can grow significantly. Even though his first investments were small, the idea of seeing his money grow automatically without having to do anything was transformational. Today, with the help of technologies like investment apps and digital accounts, he was able to automate his investments. This allowed him to invest regularly without worrying about doing it manually. These apps offered the option to invest small amounts, so he didn't need to wait until he had a lot of money to start. He could invest $10 or $20 or whatever was possible each month, and over time, that amount began to grow. He also learned the importance of patience in the world of investing. It wasn't about getting rich quickly. It was about having a long-term vision. He knew that by investing consistently, even with small amounts, he was creating. The great lesson he took from this experience was that investing doesn't require large sums. It requires discipline and consistency. He understood that by creating the habit of investing regularly, even with modest amounts, he was paving the way for a secure and prosperous financial future. Now that he had a foundation of knowledge, control over his finances, and an investment strategy in place, he decided to create a plan to organize his financial life more clearly and turn his goals into reality. He created a simple yet effective plan that he could follow month by month to reach financial freedom. This plan was divided into 5 steps, one for each month, and he was determined to follow each one. Month 1, Mindset Shift. In the first month, the focus was entirely on changing his mindset. He realized that without a new way of thinking about money, everything he did would be in vain. The biggest obstacle was actually the way he saw money and the limiting beliefs he had about it. So he dedicated this month to studying personal finance, learning more about the mindset of the wealthy, and most of all, replacing his old ideas about money with a new mindset, a mindset of abundance and prosperity. He asked himself every day, how can I make my money work for me? This mindset shift was crucial for him to start acting more strategically and wisely with what he had. Month 2, Financial Organization. The second month was dedicated to financial organization. He knew that to build a solid foundation, he needed a control system. So he started using tools to track his expenses and create clearer budgets. With spreadsheets and apps, he categorized his finances into housing, food, leisure, investments, and emergencies. He forced himself to follow the 70-10-10-10 rule with discipline. The goal wasn't to cut out everything he enjoyed, but to learn to live within his means and focus on what truly mattered. In this month, he learned that money isn't an end, it's a means to achieve his goals. Month 3. Earn extra income with what you already know. The third month was about action. He realized he couldn't rely solely on his salary. So, he used his skills and talents to create extra income streams. He began selling homemade products, offering services in his area of expertise, and exploring new ways to earn money with what he already knew how to do. This month's main goal was to step out of his comfort zone and take a risk on something new. Every real earned outside his main job was an achievement, a sign he was on the right path. Month 4. Start investing even, if just a little. In the 4th month, he began investing more seriously. Although he had already started with small amounts, he devoted this month to learning more about the financial markets and choosing more diversified investments. He knew compound interest was the key to growing his wealth, and that would only be possible if he started investing regularly. He focused on low-risk investments like mutual funds and stocks of established companies, and he began allocating more money to these options. Even with small values, he understood that the important thing was to make his money work. Month 5, a solid foundation with knowledge, control, and freedom. Finally, in the 5th month, he began to see his solid financial foundation taking shape. He had more control over his spending, was investing regularly, and had several extra income streams. Most importantly, he was beginning to feel the freedom that comes from having knowledge and control over his finances. He knew this was just the beginning, but now he had the tools and the mindset needed to stay on the path to prosperity. He was finally starting to see the difference between working for money and making money work for him. This 5-month plan was fundamental to his financial transformation. He didn't become rich overnight, but he was on the right path. The most important thing was that he started to take action and took control of his financial life. He learned that financial success doesn't happen suddenly. It's the result of consistent actions and smart decisions, week after week, month after month. As he advanced on his financial journey, he began to notice something important. His attitudes and thoughts were shaped by limiting beliefs he held about money and success. He used to think, "I'm not good enough to invest. I'll never be able to do this. Money is hard to earn." These limiting phrases were blocking his progress. He realized he needed to change the way he saw himself and the way he viewed money. That's when he had a powerful insight. Replace limiting phrases with smart questions. Instead of focusing on what he couldn't do, he started asking himself, how can I make my money work for me? What actions can I take today to improve my financial situation? What do I need to learn to invest with more confidence? He began to see that instead of being trapped in thoughts of scarcity, asking questions opened new paths and creative solutions. Each question was like a key that unlocked a door to new possibilities. Kiyosaki always says that how we think about money can be a turning point. While many people are stuck in negative beliefs, the rich ask questions that move them forward in search of solutions. He understood that by asking instead of affirming, he was changing the way he dealt with obstacles. Questions created space for reflection, action, and continuous learning. He also realized that the answers to those questions had been within him all along. He just had never asked the right ones. This made him feel more empowered and ready to make better decisions. Every time he asked a new question, he started seeing new opportunities around him, even in the most challenging situations. He learned to use difficulties as springboards for growth instead of seeing them as insurmountable barriers. Now he knew that the key to success was learning to ask the right questions and being open to the answers. He stopped limiting himself by what he thought he couldn't do and started focusing on how he could overcome the challenges. This shift in perspective is what led him to take the next big leap in his journey toward financial freedom. This mental transition was a true turning point for him. He realized that a scarcity mindset wouldn't take him anywhere, but an abundance mindset, fueled by smart questions, empowered him to reach goals that once seemed impossible. During his financial journey, he also realized that people often spend large amounts of money on things that bring no lasting value to their lives. He recognized that for a long time, he had fallen into that same trap, spending money on material goods and superficial experiences that felt good in the moment but didn't contribute to his real happiness or to building a stable financial future. He began reflecting on his choices and understood that to truly achieve his financial freedom goals, he needed to make conscious trade-offs. He decided that instead of buying more sneakers or branded clothes, he would start investing in something more meaningful: his future. Instead of spending on immediate luxury, he began investing in books and courses that helped him develop his skills, and expand his knowledge. He understood that true wealth wasn't in appearances, but in building a solid future and making money work for him. He started using his time and money more strategically. Buying a book instead of a disposable item was one of the most remarkable changes in his life. He discovered that the real value was in the education and knowledge he was acquiring. That was his first step in letting go of the consumerist mindset and embracing an investor's mindset focused on the long term. He learned to see every spending decision as an opportunity to build his future rather than satisfy a momentary desire. This mindset shift had a direct impact on his finances. He began to see that instead of seeking external validation through material things, he could achieve a deeper sense of freedom by investing in his personal and financial growth. In the long run, the return from this investment was far more valuable than any luxury item he could buy. He realized that by focusing on what truly matters, his education, his investments, and his future, he was building a financial legacy that couldn't be destroyed by trends or passing fashions. In addition, he understood that time is one of the most precious resources we have. That's why he began to value every minute of his day. He started spending his time more productively, prioritizing activities that contributed to his personal and financial growth, like studying, investing, and working on his side projects. More than anything else, this helped him realize that financial freedom isn't about how much you have, but how you use what you already have. By making wiser, future-focused choices, he began to reap the rewards of a more balanced and fulfilling life. He learned that true wealth comes from the ability to make conscious, long-term focused decisions. It's not about living for external appearances or showing off material things, but about building a secure future where money works for you. He saw that the key to true freedom was valuing what really matters, his time, his education, and his potential to create something lasting. Throughout this journey, he learned valuable lessons about how a change in mindset, control over his finances, and investing in his personal growth could transform his life. He realized that more than earning more money, the true secret to wealth lies in how you manage what you already have. With discipline, financial education, and the ability to make smart choices, he went from being someone in debt and out of control to someone who could now look toward the future with confidence and security. And the best part, he was no longer trapped in the endless pursuit of more money or status. Now he invests his time and money in what really matters: his growth, his future, and the legacy he wants to leave behind. He's living proof that it's possible to change your financial situation even if you don't start with much. True financial freedom begins with the decision to take action, to learn, and to build something solid, one step at a time. Now it's your turn. It doesn't matter where you are right now. What matters is what you decide to do today. If you apply the principles we've discussed here, you can start walking your own path toward financial freedom. Remember, change begins with mindset, and then it shows up in every action you take. If you enjoyed this content and believe it could help others, share it with friends and family who are also seeking financial freedom. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more tips and inspiration on how to achieve your financial independence.